we'll get back to the election in a bit. I do want your thoughts on 2020. But two other things I want to cover with you. First is something of a kind of new outbreak of a debate over speech and the left. And it's written by, there was a very, I think, in fact, a very good, but very provocative Matt Taibbi article dealing with this. But more broadly, beyond that sort of particular controversy, again, I think he wrote a very good piece. But I think that, and I want, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to connect this with perhaps some of your work around manufacturing consent and a sort of substantive view of freedom of speech, because it seems to me right now that one, it's sort of fallen out of favor amongst some on the left. And I actually think more ominously, I prefer to just have that actual debate with people. But some have sort of reverted to a very narrow libertarian position, which is that if the state isn't mandating something, then it's not an issue. So then we don't have to worry about, as an example, media monopolies or openness on tech platforms, as an example. Of course, you can hold up these atrocious examples of all sorts of obscene and bigoted people taking advantage of these platforms. But at the same time, we know that the sort of overall arc of sort of controlling these things will have implications for, as an example, investigating U.S. foreign policy or something like that. So anyways, I'm giving you a lot of a preamble here, but I'd like your thoughts on how you relate to the question of speech, and in fact, even when it's quite controversial, and why you hold it, I guess, as both a political and moral principle, if I read you correctly.
First of all, we should think a little bit, as you pointed out before, about the history. Why is this issue arising now? Is it new? It's the norm for decades, but it was always targeted against the left, so nobody paid attention to it. Way beyond anything that's happening now.
Right.
I mean, I'll just give you personal experiences. Others have far worse ones. Meetings broken up, violently disrupted, talks canceled, just books destroyed. So, for example, the first book that you mentioned, Manufacturing Consent, first book that Ed Herman and I wrote together was early 70s. The book was published by a very successful publisher. 20,000 copies were printed. The publisher was owned by a big major corporation, mega corporation. And one of the executives in the corporation saw the ads and didn't like it and wanted to look at the book, was horrified, and demanded that the publisher withdraw it from publication. And when they refused, he destroyed the entire publisher, put all of its books, all of its stock was destroyed, all the books, to prevent it from distributing a book of ours. Did anybody care? Actually, out of curiosity, I brought it to the attention of leading civil libertarians like Nat Hentoff and the ACLU, but they didn't see any problem. It's not state censorship. If a corporation decides to destroy a publisher and destroy all its stock to keep some book from appearing, what's wrong with that? In fact, it was hard to find. Ben Bakdickian was about the one person who found something wrong with this. But that's not the only time. I could give you other cases of mine where books were withdrawn from publication and I was asked to return the advance because it had some political content that the publisher didn't like. Other people have been fired, faculty positions eliminated, and so on. Nobody cared. That wasn't censorship. It was directed against the left, vastly beyond anything that's going on today. Now that doesn't justify what's going on today. First of all, I really wouldn't call it the left. So when the New York Times withdraws an op-ed, which I don't think they should have done, it's pretty hard to call that the left. When a lot of young people decide to deplatform some speaker, I think they're making a bad mistake. even from a tactical point of view, there are much better ways to deal with it. Like you can run a counter session where you expose what's going on and use it as an educational opportunity. A lot of things can be done. So I think it's wrong in principle, and it's tactically wrong. Right? It's a gift to the far right. They love it. But
And the platforms.
we should bear in mind that it's a very small part of what has been the norm for as long back as you want to go. It's now targeting people who are considered respectable in the mainstream, so it's a problem. But we should be quite aware of what's going on. But yes, it's the wrong thing to do, and we should try to stop it.
And thank you. And really just underline that delineation that just because it's happening in the private sector does not mean that it's not an enormous threat. Particularly to the left, obviously.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.